Good morning and happy Sabbath, everyone. We are going through a series of topics on practical Christianity, dealing with, I would say, issues, day-to-day issues that life brings to us. And for some of them, the Bible has a very clear answer. And one of them is marriage. And at one point or another, some of us have been very interested in marriage. And I remember being very young, and for a number of reasons, I really wanted to study about marriage, to understand marriage. I'll talk to people that were married. I was reading books. And one of the reasons I was scared that if I will marry someone and my marriage is not going to work, I just couldn't imagine that. And for a long time, I read, I've studied, I talked to people, and I really wanted to understand. And at the time of our wedding, we were two perfect people. I don't know what happened afterwards, but I've learned that even if you put together two perfect people, your marriage is not going to be perfect. So we will look into marriage, and specifically into what is the biblical perspective on marriage. For some of you, the topic is pretty simple and clear, but as you will see, it's not as clear as you think it is. And I can tell you that in the church, you'll find that in the Bible, the Pharisees, which are the scholars of that time, they come to Jesus and they say, does the law allow this and that? So, if you don't know, there is a church law, in a sense, that things are determined based on some principles and decisions. And we'll get more into that. But the topic, I think it's a very important topic, and you'll be joining me in the study. At one point in the study, I will invite you for a dialogue. And the study this morning will end, I think, with a very interesting story. So stay with me to the study. Take notes. If you have a question, raise your hand. If you have a question during the study, I think you should raise your hand and ask the question. And if I will be able, I'll be provide an answer. So I hope it's not going to be only an interesting but a useful study to the end. I'd like to pray one more time as we begin to study. Father in heaven, we thank you for this beautiful day outside, for the Sabbath rest, that we can find ourselves and find you, commune with each other, and be a blessing to others too. Bless the study this morning and give us clarity of mind and a willing heart. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We read the Bible passages, basically Matthew 19, verses 3 to 7. We will look into it. I'm not going to read it now because we'll stay with the passage. And to be honest with you, I'm very much tempted to give up on PowerPoint and to hold the Bible in my hand. And one of the reasons is because I have the feeling that in some churches or in other places, the Bible is actually left aside. And that is not my intention. My intention is to bring the Bible to the upfront. And the fact that I'm using PowerPoint is just for illustrational purpose and teaching purposes. But the main purpose is the Bible. So the purpose is to reaffirm the biblical teaching on marriage as it is understood by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I'm saying that the biblical teachings on marriage, and then as it is understood by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, because other people have other views on marriage, as we'll briefly mention. So, redefining marriage, what is a woman? If you didn't know, for some people, that's not a clear question. And in 2022, in the judicial confirmation in Tennessee, for the Judge Jackson, one of the senators, Marsha Blackburn, asked the Supreme Court nominee, Mrs. Jackson, to define the word woman. Jackson declined, stating, "I can't. I'm not a biologist." So this is a judge and without getting into the political, because that's not my purpose to discuss politics, but this is the occasion where you have to nominate one of the people that are making decisions about the future and the lives of other people. And she avoided to give an answer to the question, what is a woman? And she says, well, I can't tell you, I can't comment on that. Later on, US Today picked up on the conversation that happened, and under the title, Marsha Blackburn asked Judge Jackson to define woman. Science says there is no simple answer. And it says, scientists, gender law scholars, I even didn't know that there is such like this, philosophers of biology, said Jackson's response was commendable, though perhaps misleading. It's useful, they say, that Jackson suggested science could help answer Blackburn's questions, but they note that a competent biologist would not be able to offer a definite answer either. Scientists agree that there is no sufficient way to clearly define what makes someone a woman, and with billions of women on the planet, there is much variation. I was wondering, are there any women in the room? So you live in a time when even the question, what's a woman, seems to be a very complicated question for some people. Isn't this an interesting time in the world's history? That people don't, and these are not, apparently some of the people in leading positions have a hard time defining what's a woman and what's a man. What about marriage? Defining the marriage. Well, the same-sex marriage is becoming an old story by now. In 2015, the White House changed the colors in the rainbow colors, affirming, celebrating actually, the Supreme Court's ruling that Constitution guarantees the right to same-sex marriage in all 50 states in the United States. And the first time was in 2004, when in Massachusetts was the first state to officially recognize the same-sex marriage. It took about 10 years, so in all United States, that's not a question anymore. With that being said, definitely some of the churches have adopted the same philosophy. Not the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But there are churches that have adopted this idea that actually a man and a man can get married, a woman and a woman can go to church and they get they can get the blessing of the priest or the pastor. I was looking into an article in Psychology Today, and the title was 7 Kinds of Marriages and One Awesome Alternative. 7 kinds of marriages. And they in this, which is, it's a renowned review of psychological ideas, and that's what they teach in school, your kids and mine, and your grandkids and mine. 7 kinds of marriages. Did you know that there are 7 kinds of marriages? Well, yeah, I didn't want to waste your time with this because this is just the introduction. But they think that there are many kinds of marriages. As far as I know one only. But they teach and they promote all kinds of ideas. Definitely some of them very strange, in my opinion. Plus that the main thought today is that individual happiness is what matters. If I am married with my wife and I'm not happy, well, probably marriage is just a conventional social custom, and I'm not supposed to stay with her simply because she doesn't make me happy. So these are ideas again promoted. I remember in my training at Andrews in the doctoral program, right at the beginning we were having a marriage class, and we had to buy the textbook for the class. And well, we have a class, you have to buy the textbook for the class. So I bought the textbook. And right at the beginning, they were defining the terms. One of them was redefining the terms of family and marriage. And I was very surprised by the idea of redefining the terms. And I asked the professor, who was actually a very good professor, and I said, "Sir, can you help me understand why do we have this textbook in our school? Because it begins with redefining the concepts of family and marriage." And I said, "I thought that we are clear on that, at least in this school." And he said, "Oh, I have to apologize because I even don't follow the book. I even didn't look at the book. But I recommended the book because the previous teacher recommended for the class." He didn't know about the book. And he said, "Well, just forget about the book." So it did happen that this was a good teacher, and he said, "Forget about the book." But others will endorse ideas like, well, you know, if you're not married, if you're not happy in your marriage, you just move ahead or dump it or do something else. So redefining the marriage just as the culture and the traditions are changing. Reaffirming the marriage is the second part of our study today. Reaffirming the marriage. And again, we look at the Bible, we recognize, we believe in this place and in our lives as Christians, we believe the Bible is the norm for beliefs and practices. So let's go through. So in Matthew 19, the Pharisees came to him. Again, the scholars of the day, testing him. Many times they try to catch Jesus with interesting questions, and they say, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reasons?" And when they ask the question, "Is it lawful?" they mean, is it in agreement with the Bible and with their teachings? Because there are two schools of thought in those days. One of them was Hillel, a famous Jewish scholar. And according to him, who was supposed to be the conservative, you are not supposed to to divorce his wife for any reasons. Or Hillel was the more liberal. I don't remember exactly because I didn't go to their schools. One of them was very liberal and the other one was very more conservative. The more liberal said, you can divorce your wife for any reason you want, actually. The more conservative says, no, you can divorce your wife only for sexual immorality, but that needed to be defined. So they wanted to catch Jesus with a question on divorce, and which again, I may use a few examples. It's still an interesting topic, if not a difficult one, because not everything is. Sometimes it looks that not everything is clear as you want to, but Jesus brings them back. Jesus brings them back to the Bible. So when they are asking Jesus a question, Jesus is answering them with the Bible, and Jesus goes back to Genesis and says, "Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one." So Jesus makes a straight reference to the very beginning, to the very creation. And the Bible says that God created man, and the word is the word Adam, is the Hebrew word, in his own image. In the image of God he created male and female, he created them. So God created humanity as a species, but he created them male and female. And that's where Jesus makes a reference to. It's very interesting because when you put a male and a female together to complement and make it a whole, they actually become a husband and a wife. Separated, they are part of the species of humanity, but when you bring them together, the definition of what they are in a relationship, that changes. God created amazingly the world, and even in Genesis chapter 5, when God told Noah to bring in the ark, do you remember? When God told him bring in the ark, God says, bring them 2 by 2, a male and a female, a male and a female. So God, it seems that the pattern is it's a common pattern in God's creation. It's not only in humanity, but it's in whole creation. It's a principle that God put together right at the beginning. And in Genesis, we read also in Genesis that the Lord said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I'll make him a helper comparable to him." So Adam gave name to all the cattle, all the birds of the air, to every beast on the field. But for Adam, there is not found a helper comparable to him. In the creation of man, the design, the way God does it progressively. He creates man in the beginning. He creates Eve afterwards. And by the way, how many thousands of years were between the creation of man and the creation of woman? It was not thousands of years. It was probably hours, right? Otherwise, Adam would have lived for a long time by himself, right? So I'm saying this because people that teach theistic evolution, there are Christians, even in some of our schools, they teach, oh, God created things in millions and millions of years. So when you come to the creation of man, you have problems before. But when you come to the creation of man, the creation of Adam and Eve, then that's where you get in real problems. Because if you believe in theistic evolution, it means that Adam lived alone and by himself for a long, long time. Is that even possible? So God created a helper for man. And in Ecclesiastes, the Bible emphasizes the fact that two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion, but woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him. And if two lay down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Though one may be overpowered by another, two can withstand him. And there are a threefold cord which is not quickly broken. In the book of Ecclesiastes, we find these ideas which emphasize the need of the two to be together. It is not singleness, it's an option for life, and not everybody ends up in a marriage. But the Bible mentions again and again that it was in God's design that he will bring two people together in marriage, a man and a woman, for prosperity, for support, for emotional help, and so they can advance. In the book Patriarchs of Prophets, we find God himself gave Adam a companion. He provided a helpmeet for him, a helper corresponding to him, one who was fitted to be his companion and who could be one with him in love and sympathy. When you look at human beings, there are five main components of 5 dimensions: the physical, the intellectual, emotional, social, and spiritual. And when you think of, I'm talking for those people looking for a companion or for a husband or for a wife, when you look at that, you look at these dimensions and you ask yourself questions. How do we fit on that? I guess it has never been a perfect fit other than Adam and Eve, but still you look at the ideal and say, well, how do I fit someone physically, intellectually, emotionally, socially, and spiritually? And there is more that can be said about this staying and being compatible. Through life, also it's important that we try to nurture these dimensions in both the physical, in the intellectual, emotional, social, and spiritual. Staying together, growing together, it's also important. We'll mention later on, because sometimes there is a drifting apart in the family. In one of the dimensions or a few of dimensions, sometimes we drift apart. And we'll come back to that. God celebrated the first marriage. Thus, the institution has for its originator the creator of the universe. Marriage is honorable. It was one of the first gifts of God to men, and it is one of the 2 institutions that after the fall Adam brought with him beyond the gates of paradise. When the divine principles are recognized and obeyed in this relation, marriage is a blessing. It guards the purity and happiness of the race. It provides for men's social needs. It elevates the physical, the intellectual, and the moral nature. So in marriage, supposedly we complement each other and we build each other to become actually a whole. And I'm going to make a statement. My statement is not an absolute statement because I believe there is a place for some people to be single. Not everybody has to get married. But I believe in marriage, there is something that you have that you won't have otherwise. Not only that we begin to understand better the other half of the world, but it brings something to you that you won't have otherwise. And I think that was in God's design. The Seventh-day Adventist has a statement of beliefs. In belief number 23, it says, marriage was divinely established in Eden and affirmed by Jesus to be a lifelong union between a man and a woman in a loving companionship. For the Christian, a marriage commitment is to God as well as to the spouse, and it should be entered into between a man and a woman who share a common faith. Mutual love, honor, respect, and responsibility are the fabric of this relationship, which is to reflect the love, sanctity, and closeness and permanence of a relationship between Christ and his church. So as you see in this statement, we affirm twice that marriage is between a man and a woman. So the Seventh-day Adventist Church believes, again, that the marriage is between a man and a woman. And there is no middle ground for that. So, and then it speaks about the commitment. It's a commitment for life to God first and then to the spouse. It's a reflection of our commitment to God. So the Pharisees continue with their questions, but Jesus says in the end, so then, they are no longer two but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate. It may happen that sometimes what God has planned to be a wonderful and lifelong experience, it comes to an abrupt end. We bought a house in Fresno, and when we bought a house, the people emptied the house and they left, I don't remember if they left anything in the house, but I remember they left a bottle of wine on the fireplace mantle, bottle of wine. And someone else was left in the house, and I wonder if Alina remembers that. Do you remember, Alina, what there was something else left in the living room, I think on a coffee table. Do you remember? A bouquet of flowers, a dry bouquet of flowers, which was a wedding bouquet of flowers. It was dried up. It was probably kept for a long time in that family. But this was a divorcee house. And the people, actually, they sold the house because they were going through a divorce. And I remember that it was interesting because I think the lady was left in the house to deal with the business and stuff, and she left the wedding bouquet. It was full, and we emptied it in the toilet. So, yeah, so we emptied it in the toilet. We didn't drink it, and we didn't give it to someone else. But it was a shade of sadness when we found the bouquet of flowers, you know, which was once upon a time the witness of a beautiful day in their life. And sometimes you know, when they left the house, they left everything, and they left the bouquet of flowers there. And I remember I took a picture of that, and I couldn't find it, so I found this on internet. It was the witness of a sad experience. So you wonder, my question is, what happens when between two people that love each other so much, they said, oh, I'll love you to the end. And sometimes you wonder what happens. So I found this poem, Estrangement. We share a house, but not the night, two shadows passing without light. Your voice still echoes down the hall, yet somehow does not reach at all. I miss the way you used to smile, the way we'd linger for a while. Now every glance feels far away, like winter stealing all of May. Still, somewhere underneath the pain, beneath the pride, beneath the blame, a fragile ember softly glows, too weak to burn, too strong to close. It's the sad expression of the fact that it is possible in marriage an estrangement, a drifting apart takes place. And this morning, I was thinking to ask you, what do you think can lead a woman or a man to drift apart from the husband and for the wife? And I will ask the ladies, what can you tell us, what do you think happens in this relationship that can lead a woman to drift away from her husband? Raise up your hand and please tell us. I'm talking specifically from a woman, because then I would like to ask a man. I ask the man. Tammy. Would have stayed in place. Yeah. Make you drifting apart. So Tammy says, for those of you who couldn't hear, that at one point when she chose biblical Christianity, the fact that she changed her beliefs and some of the practices, I assume, put a wedge between them and somehow pushed their relationship apart. But and I saw someone else, Valerie, I think you had. But I'm talking from a woman's perspective. What do you think can happen that what would make a woman drift away in a relationship? Not spending time together. Yes. Denise. Hurtful and unkind things that have been said. Yes. Yes, Becky. Lack of and then I would like you as a woman to tell us, the men, what do you think happens when a woman drifts away from her husband? So it's a lack of communication and the fact that she doesn't feel loved. Anybody else? Tell us, teach us, ladies. Denise. Abuse. Mental. Physical abuse. Anger. Yes. That are directed to the spouse. Yes. Is that all? Self-centeredness. Yes. Selfishness. Yes. Jennifer. Yes. Yeah, so the way we communicate, and love is very important to be expressed in. Anybody else? Infidelity, sure. Yeah, infidelity, it's a clear one and a big one. Is that all? Okay. What about men? So now, brothers, gentlemen, what, from your perspective, what would make you feel like the relationship is getting cold and you're drifting away from your wife? Yes. Physical. Are you talking about intimacy in particular? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
My own experience is in a big family, and I can really like a friendship and respect.
You like, okay, so if, in other words, you say that if the woman doesn't provide enough attention and respect, that make a man drift apart from.
It also forces you to pray together.
Well, that keeps us together. But for now, I'm just trying to think and understand each other a little bit better. You know, I wanted to bring a whiteboard and start writing them so we can, because this is, you know, what I'm saying, that estrangement and drifting apart doesn't happen in one day. It happens progressively and almost sometime unperceptibly. Yeah. Adam? Yeah. 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 Okay, so if you are not appreciated, if if there's the nagging there, right? The annoying, I mean, if there is, and I think it applies to both men and women. If we do not, you know, number one, respect each other, if we do not appreciate each other, you know, if it's, I don't know how you feel, but it seems that it's part of human nature. It's easier to make negative comments than positive observations, right? And to say, well, this, why did you do this? Or why did you do that? So being very reactive in a relationship. What about not paying attention to the other's emotional needs? Do you think it happens that, especially with the younger families that have young kids, the kids absorb a lot of time, especially for the mother, and do you think it may happen that the husband may feel neglected? Is that a possibility? Yeah. Well, because it's naturally biological for the mother to take care of the kids and pour all the attention and love into the kids, especially in the growing years, you know, and the husband feels neglected and forgotten, right? And if he goes to work and there is another pretty lady that makes all kind of charming comments, well, you know, there is a strong pull there, right? If a woman doesn't feel, I believe if a woman doesn't feel appreciated, cared for, you know, and the same, if the woman goes to work and has another coworker there that praises her and loves her and is very kind and you know, attentive, well, guess what? She starts drifting in towards someone else, which is the rate of divorce the rate of divorce in the United States, it's on average 50 to 60%. At least the statistics. It's probably more than that. A few years ago in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, can you guess the rate of divorce, the official rate of divorce in the Seventh-day Adventist Church? Yeah, well, technically they say that the rate of divorce a few years ago in the Seventh-day Adventist Church was 24%. But still, it's a high rate of divorce. How many of you have friends or family members that have divorced? Lots of us. And I've seen many cases where, and it's on a scale of stress after the death of a loved one, divorce has the highest score of stress. But so what I'm saying this morning is trying to, you know, watch over the quality of the relationship we have. And I think one of the good things is to express that. I mean, if you feel neglected, try to express that to the other, you know, to the spouse and tell, dear, I would like to tell you, I would like to talk to you. When can we have a time to talk about this? Because I would like to share with you that I feel neglected in the last, I don't know exactly what's happening. Maybe there is something else in your mind. I'll be happy to talk to you about this, but it seems that there is something else and I feel that we are drifting apart. Would that be fair to do? I think it's fair, and we need to talk about that, right? Hopefully in a functional relationship. Calvin, do you have a question?
You say 50 to 60% of the United States, you know, but if we were to
Yeah. Well, but there are 7 kinds of marriages, and the whole thing about vows that's not part of 6 of them. There is only one marriage that they call it the covenant marriage. I'll mention it a little bit in the end. Because they mentioned in the 7th was the covenant marriage. In that, yes, you have a covenant. But in the rest of them, there is no covenant. It's just okay, they have all kinds of, including the open marriages as they call it. But now let's move on with the Bible passage. They said to him, why then in this conversation between Jesus and these scholars, they said to him, why then did Moses command you to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away? Because Jesus says, God made them in the beginning, male and female, and he made them forever to become one flesh and to stay like this. Then they flip the question and they come to Jesus and says, well, but Moses says that you can give a certificate of divorce to your wife and let her go. Again, I don't want to get into why did that happen and so. The point is a certificate of divorce showed that the woman is still a worthy woman, and so she doesn't drift in prostitution. So the certificate of divorce says, well, my husband left me, but I'm an honorable woman. That was the purpose. But Jesus says, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. The question is how complicated is this passage to understand it? In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus says exactly the same thing, and this is the Sermon on the Mount. Now, again, I have to mention the fact that in the church, we do not have a word for it, but you may say the church law. Marriage and divorce is probably the most complicated chapter because sometimes there are very, very difficult circumstances. But fundamentally, fundamentally, I believe the Bible is clear. That's what I believe. Not only that I believe the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the church manual. The church manual, it's a document where the Seventh-day Adventist Church has come together and established some principle for organization and function. It's an international document. It's not an American document, it's not a Russian document, it's not a Chinese document. It's a document that puts together by people, delegates from the whole world. In that document, it says the church adheres to the view of marriage and home without reservation, believing that any lowering of this high view is to the extent of lowering the heavenly ideal. The belief that marriage is a divine institution rests upon the Holy Scriptures. Accordingly, all thinking and reasoning in the perplexing field of divorce and remarriage must constantly be harmonized with that holy ideal revealed in Eden. So, it could be a long conversation with very interesting questions, because essentially and ultimately, you and me I as a pastor and you as a local church, sometimes you have to make decisions on very difficult cases. For example, let me ask, what would you do in the following situation? A lady, married, happily married with husband, 2 teenage kids, professionals, life going wonderfully, lots of pictures on Facebook, and it seems that everything is wonderful and great. One day she comes to her husband and says, my dear, I'm sorry to tell you, but I'm filing for a divorce. I've been in a relationship with someone else for 5 years, and I'm leaving our marriage. It was a shock for him, and I wondered, couldn't he get any clues that something was going wrong? She files for divorce, leaves her family. She is living with someone who's a church member. He leaves his family with 2 kids and goes with this lady. So 2 families were basically broken apart, and they just abandon their families with kids, and they just go together. If these people will come to your church and would say, we'd like to become members of your local church, what would you do? I'm leaving you with the question, and I would like to hear your answer, not in public, but I would like you to tell me, what would you do? Not only what do you do, the question is, what should be done? Flavio. We technically make a difference between visitors and members. Someone that's a visitor has never committed their life to the biblical teachings as they are understood by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Those who are members of the church, they said, I understand the Bible, I commit my life to it, and I commit myself to live by these biblical teachings and standards. Someone can be a visitor for 100 years, but they have no responsibility. But when you get baptized in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, there is a vow as a Seventh-day Adventist Church. By the way, Seventh-day Adventist Church is not the only one who is asking the members to commit themselves to the biblical teachings. There are other churches that do that too. And anyway, so I leave this question with you, and I'll be very interested in your opinion. The new couple. Yeah, the new couple. Then she left her family, he left his family, they get married, and they move from, let's say they move from Southern California and they come to here because it's a peaceful countryside. And they say, we want to become members of your church. What would you do about that? So think of it and let me know during potluck or afterwards. I'm really curious on your opinion. Not only on your opinion, the question is, how do you relate that to the standards that we as a church have said, this is what we believe. Moving on to the third section, which is the covenant. You see, in the understanding of Christians along the time, marriage was not a contract, marriage was a covenant. You stick to a covenant when you make a covenant, and I like the way this is. I found this one online, but we consider this as the traditional marriage vows and the covenant. And it says, our marriage covenant, believing God in his wisdom and providence has established marriage as a covenant relationship, sacred and lifelong promise, reflecting our unconditional love for one another, believing that God intends for marriage covenant to reflect his promise to never leave us or forsake us. So there is a very interesting spiritual correlation between the way I relate to my wife, which reflects my commitment to God. We, the undersigned, do hereby reaffirm our solemn pledge to fulfill our marriage vows. And it says, I joyfully receive you as God's perfect gift for me to have and hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love you, to honor you, to cherish you, to protect you, forsaking all others, and as long as both shall live. How many of us have said these words? Many of us did say these words, right? Someone is asking, do you want to get out of it? Let me tell you something. You can't. With one exception, or two. It's either death shall put us apart, or adultery, as the Bible calls it. I'd like to end with a story. Do you like this couple? Young and beautiful. Does anybody recognize them? Most probably not. He is of a Scandinavian origin. His name is Knudsen. He is an American. I met him at what is an ASI convention. It's a convention for business people, and he was one of the speakers. Life began beautifully for Dr. Knudsen and his wife. I don't remember what she worked at that time. You know, both of them committed Christians, Seventh-day Adventist Christians. Life was going great for them. Life was beautiful, right? And this is their family, 4 kids. I don't remember exactly where was home for them. They just purchased a home, enjoying life in nature and countryside. Beautiful kids. He works as an ER doctor. And especially the younger daughter, who at the time of my story was about 15 or 16, she was a beautiful amazingly godly teenage daughter, to the point that she'll make her own songs and poems, religious poems. She'll memorize the Bible. She was the perfect child. So life was going great for them. On a Sunday morning, he goes to work, again, as the ER doctor in the area, and he knew that his wife had to leave from their country home, take the car and go do some, I don't know, shopping or something somewhere. And as he is in the ER, they get one of these alerts that there has been a terrible accident, and to be ready that they may bring 2 patients in very, very critical condition. When the patients were brought, the patients were his wife and his daughter. Unfortunately, from our human perspective, the daughter passed away. And he was there to work on both of them. His wife, they didn't know if she's going to survive or not. At best, they thought that she might be a quadriplegic, neck down. And he tells the story of how for months he didn't know, or for a long time he didn't know if she's going to survive or not. And then she says, the most beautiful sound I have ever heard was my wife's voice again. This is the way she looks now. As you could see, attached to her right hand, there's a device so somehow she can use a spoon. So she has not regained full mobility. I met them at a convention, and this is a picture which I took from afar because I was kind of shy to go and take a close picture, but you could see her there, him here. This is one of their kids. My question to you is this. What would keep a young professional, a young doctor, to stay with a handicapped wife, which is not even able to walk or cook or do anything, or almost anything? What would keep him with this woman? Would you be able to tell me? What is it? Is it because she's beautiful and sexy? Is that the case? She's not at this point. It is because she's very active and doing lots of interesting things in life, or playing hobbies and stuff. She's not able to do that, most of it. So what keeps these 2 people together? It is one word. It is the covenant they made with each other at the beginning of this experience. And this covenant is not a human invention. This covenant is based on what God told us to do. It's a reflection of someone's commitment to God in the same time. I don't want to ask how many of you have been tempted to drop your spouse. Is anybody here? I have to, my hand is up, because sometime I got so upset with Alina, and I said, if it were not for God, I will take off. And that was the truth. And it was not so much because of her, but it's because of me, because I'm a selfish human being. And if I don't like you, I don't like you, and I don't need to be with you. Right? At least that's the human way of reacting, which is very common in the world today. Is that right? Oh, I don't like you anymore. You annoy me. Bye. So what keeps 2 human beings together? It's that commitment that they make in front of God and in front of other people. In their home, they posted at one point this picture of love you then, love you still, always have, always will. You see, when things are good and when things are well, we enjoy that, right? But when the hard time comes, what do we do then? And I think it's a supernatural, it is a supernatural power that keeps someone to stay committed and faithful under very difficult circumstances. And some of you know much better than I do what that means. Some of us probably don't know. But it is marriage is not a human invention, is not a social contract. It is something that God invented in the beginning, and He is teaching us the real meaning of that. I would end with this slide, which I think it's a wonderful, as far as I know, Dr. Knudsen is still with his family, with his wife, taking care of the children and going through, moving ahead with life the way it is. Which is, for me, it's amazing. It's just amazing. But if the Bible is true, if Jesus' words matter, then this is God's way of doing things. Any questions? Well, don't forget to tell me, how would you solve that problem with the couple? I'm just curious. I'll tell you what I think needs to be done, what I think is right to be done, but I'm curious of your opinion. May the Lord bless your marriages and unity, and in coming closer together, and in being a reflection of who God is.